Awesome. All right, we are rolling. We are rolling with Mr. Kels Goodman, who honestly I have not seen him without a beard for a long time. So
Whoa.
this is very exciting to see Kels Goodman so aerodynamic and looking so fresh.
Right.
Yeah, he's like just like a little lightning bolt in the wind, I suppose.
Yeah,
Uh,
my hair's shorter too. Yeah, I've really gone.
You like, I don't know, you look like 15 years younger since the last time I saw you. That's
Oh,
also because you're
man.
probably going through the film festival, and that's probably the most stressful time of your life. So uh, it's good that you're, which we will talk about later, so people know what that's all about.
Yeah.
But Kels, you and I have had like a really long and good history. I mean, we met. Gosh, it was before 2009 because that's when we did Last Eagle Scout was 2000.
Yeah.
But we met, and I think it was probably your wife Stephanie that introduced us. Oh my gosh, you know what? I think I remember. I remember exactly how.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was the festival. It was the LDS Film Festival. This was back in 2008, and I was in a movie called Minor Details that had just come out.
Yes, that's right.
Minor Details had just come
That's
out.
right. And my favorite line from there is "hydrate, hydrate." That was your line that you would always have to say.
Yeah. So I did that, and then Stephanie came up and talked to me, and she said, "Have you talked to Kels? Have you talked to my husband?" Now here's the deal, dude. You're a legend already because I had totally known about you. I didn't know about a lot of the previous film work you had done, but I had definitely learned about Will It Blend, which is one of the most successful YouTube campaigns ever created for like a company, and it was one of the very first ones too as well. And you are the author of that whole campaign. Like you made that happen. And so,
Yeah. Well, thank you.
So that was awesome. And so then we met, and then our friendship was sealed in blood. It wasn't in blood, but
That's right. We had a little ceremony, and
there was a ceremony that took place. I think it was actually the ceremony of IHOP, which everyone goes to right
that's
after.
what it is.
Right after the
That's
festival.
the best. That's when you know your friends. When you go to IHOP at 1 a.m.
afterwards, discuss the fest, and then we ended up working on a project together. But yeah, Kels, like let's get to know a little bit more about you and kind of like your journey as a filmmaker. Let's talk about Will It Blend and some of the other really cool projects that you've been up to. But yeah, how did you get involved in film to begin with?
Well, I did. I moved from. I was born in Virginia, and when I was 10, we moved to South Texas. My family did, which was kind of right on the border. And so by Brownsville, McAllen, South Padre Island is where my dad started a business. And I was 10, and when that year came out, that's when Star Wars came out. And when I talked to friends of mine who were my age, in fact, I think it was my friend Rocco DeVilliers was mentioning that we're all of us who are in our late 40s, early 50s right now, we're fans of Star Wars. And so you see this wave of filmmakers that have come. In fact, J.J. Abrams is our age, and obviously that's that age where you get excited. But I grew up way down south where equipment and gear and film and stuff was so sparse. So I had to shoot on film and turn the little rolls of film into the supermarket and wait for them, the drugstore, and wait for them to come back. 10 days later, and hopefully what I shot turned out. And so as a kid, I made films, but then I couldn't wait to go to college. Went to BYU, went to the film school there because the other schools wouldn't take me. My grades were terrible. So BYU felt bad for me and let me go there. And so I went there, and then I worked on, after BYU, I worked on Hollywood stuff in the early 90s. Cool. I worked on some movies of the week. I worked on a movie with Kathy Bates up in Heber.
These are all movies that were made that were Hollywood produced but shot in Utah.
Yeah, right? Correct. Hollywood stuff shot in Utah. I never really left the state. It was anything that came in.
Okay.
Touched by an Angel and Dumb and Dumber and anything that came in. A lot of movies of the week. Halloween, one of the Halloween movies. Real proud of that. But it was really, so I did that all through the 90s. And then finally at the end of the 90s, I started to realize that I was not, wasn't really happy with realizing. I looked at some of the guys I was working with who I've become long friends with and love, but they were like 20 years older than me, and they were still doing the same thing. And I kind of felt I need to kind of get out of this and shift my gear, even if it comes to losing, money and not being able to work on a regular basis. And so I started working on corporate things, mostly in the technical departments, camera and lighting, corporate meaning Franklin Covey, Novell, I Omega, which was big up in Ogden, all during the .com era, where a lot of these companies came out. A lot of network marketing companies, Melaleuca, anything really, Young Living, all through the 90s. I did a little with all of them in one form or another because I was kind of plugged in. And then by about 2000, probably around 99, I made I made my first feature in 99. Oh, cool. And it was a low budget thing that I almost wouldn't want to show anybody. I have a few pieces of art that I would like to not show everybody. I think we all do.
Oh, dude.
But
some of us have more than others, I'll just say.
Yeah. I have my share. And but it was something I did with Scott Christopher, okay, called Y2K, a comedy. And even Scott would probably say, "What was that movie? I don't remember." Yeah. And Scott and I, and it was just a comedy about Scott and his brother, who played his brother. Okay. And he did a wonderful job. And they basically played two guys that were stuck in a bunker, both after the same girl, and during the end the end of the world that was going to happen. And he really thought that the end of the world was coming. And we had a good time with it. We probably sold about 7 VHS copies. And I think that was about the extent of it. And so I knew that I had to do this right the next time, and I kept trying. And then in 2002, when the LDS cinema started to kick in, that's when I decided that I wanted to maybe make an LDS film. And what kind of got me into that mode was, I remember in 93, I had graduated in 92 at BYU, but in 93, Schindler's List had come out.
Oh, yeah.
And what's his name? Gerald Mullen came, who was LDS, but was a producer for Spielberg on Schindler's List. And so he came and he brought Schindler's List to BYU, talked about it, talked about the atrocities of the Jews. And there were a lot of films being made about the Jews, and they have been over the years. But I kind of was saying to myself, how come, those are some atrocities that are on the other side of the world. Right here in America, we have atrocities, and the saints have had those, where the saints have been able to, they've got, when you think about it, the saints in the 1800s were actually kicked out of the United States, and kicked it. And so Utah at the time was Mexico territory. And so when they had to move, and they kept moving west, and then eventually had to go all the way out, that means you were kicked out of the United States. And so I'd always felt that it would have been good to have a movie to talk about that. And so that's when I decided to do my own film called Handcart. And so Schindler's List kind of inspired that idea of doing that. And I was already kind of working on one before I knew that LDS cinema was kicking in. And then in 2000, Richard Dutcher came out with God's Army, and then Brigham City. And then what he did was he basically proved by God's Army that you could actually make a film with an LDS theme, make money, and do it again. And it's a market issue, because too many people think, oh, you can just make a movie about anything, and you can't, because they're so expensive. They're such big risks. And so that's what God's Army did, is God's Army proved the financial aspect of being able to make a film with an LDS theme, have enough audience to watch it, and then to be able to release it. And so that was that whole thing. And so with Handcart, I kind of did the same thing. I raised my own money. I distributed it into theaters by myself,
Wow.
which I wished I didn't do, but I sure learned a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put it into, and this is in 2002 when, sorry, I've got a cold, but
Yeah.
so I might occasionally have to wipe my nose. I apologize.
Yeah, no, no
But
worries.
so I put it into 50 theaters by myself, and in 2002, it's still hard today to get anything in a theater, but to get anything back then was even more difficult because you had to make these prints that were $2,000 each, so 35 millimeter copies, and
Yeah.
you had to get the rating, the PG rating or whatever rating you get, and then you had to advertise, and it was a lot of work that I wished I would have had somebody else do, and I did get friended offers from XL Entertainment to distribute it, and Hailstorm, but beforehand I didn't know they existed, so I had already made a deal with the investors that I would do it myself, and I kind of wished we would have gone through a distributor, but I learned a lot about doing that, and so after that film, I went to Virginia for a couple of years, did some work for Southern Virginia University. And that's my parents had moved back there, so I went to help them with some things. And then I came back to Utah. And when I came back to Utah was when I got my job with Blendtec.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like my life kind of took a turn because I was divorced, and I was kind of in a not I didn't ever think I was going to be divorced,
Mhm.
and so it was, I kind of came back to Utah kind of with my tail between my legs, thinking it was a really low point in my life.
Sure. What
So
year was this? Did you say?
this would be about 2005.
Okay, 2005.
Yeah, 2005. And so I came to Utah and I got a job at Blendtec, and that's what brought me back. And Blendtec was I'd never heard of Blendtec. I knew that I'd heard of K-Tech, and that's what their company originally was K-Tech. And so I was hired to actually produce videos about the blender. There was no real marketing at the time, but they wanted to do some.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there thinking, how do you market a blender? I mean, that could be the boringest thing on the planet,
Yeah.
But they did. But they were good. They were fun people, and I was attracted to wanting to work with them.
Yeah.
And they had a real what do you call it, engineer mentality. So their whole focus was the best blender that you could possibly have, and that was Tom Dixon who started the company and who invented all of the machines. He really had a go get 'em attitude all throughout his life of inventing. Tom Dixon invented a grain mill machine called the kitchen mill, and the church actually endorses it. The LDS Church actually endorses it. I think, I don't know if they still do, but I know for a long time, as people were getting into food storage, he was big into the whole food storage thing. And one day in the 70s, he was vacuuming up wheat with a Kirby vacuum. And on the other end of the vacuum, it turned into flour. It had done its job that an old grinder mill would do for years. A vacuum did it in seconds. And so he took that same motor and he made the grain mill and did really well with it. And then through time, he got into the blender market. And so when I came on board, I started making videos on how to use his blenders because they were kind of complicated, but they were very powerful blenders. And right now, what's ironic is right now I'm actually cutting while we're doing nothing, while production is kind of down.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm doing a documentary that I'd shot before but never finished on the history of Willet Blend. And so I go into that a little bit. So it's fresh on my mind, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
But then what happened was I was working at Blendtec for about a year, and then not long after that I met Stephanie, and we met online, and we just had a great time. She's the most awesomest woman in the world, And I hope every man says that about their woman. So that's just a little.
Dude, it's crazy because like, side tangent, but you met Stephanie like what, 2005? You said 2006?
2006, yeah.
2006. How long have you guys been married for?
We've been married. Let's see. We got married real fast. We met in May, and we got married in August. And we met online on LDS Planet.
Easy. So 2006, you got married, right?
Yeah. So we've been married. Oh, let's see. What years is this? So 14, coming up on 14 years.
14 years.
Yeah. And it was a crazy wedding too, because we were not supposed to get married till about October. But August, one day, we were sitting at my office in Blendtec, and we just said, hey, let's just go get married. Okay. And it's because she was living in Ogden. I was living in Orem, and the trips back and forth, you know, I didn't want her to stay overnight, and, you know, we didn't want to look bad, and, you know, and so we just decided to just do it. So we called the Justice of the Peace, and the Justice of the Peace sent us to his backyard in Provo, and his wife and his daughter were the witnesses, and we got married. And then right after that, we went to dinner, and then we went to somebody else's reception that night. And it was.
Are you joking me? You got married and you went to someone else's reception?
We went to somebody else's reception and didn't say anything. We were so quiet and laughing and giggling the whole night. It was actually, oh, darn it, what's his name? All of a sudden, I'm going to feel terrible now that I've forgotten. But at the reception, Scott Christopher was there, and Michael Birkeland was there.
Oh, cool.
And so who is the other one in Home Teachers? But all of a sudden.
Jeff Dowd is his name? Or?
No, it's Michael Birkeland and the other guy who played the good home teacher in the Home Teachers.
I thought it was. I don't know.
He's going to kill me. Jeff, that's it. Jeff.
Yeah.
So he's going to kill me that I forgot his name, but Jeff Burke. Yeah, thanks. Stephanie reminded me. Jeff Burke and we'd worked on a video for Blendtec. I'd hired Jeff Burke, and Jeff Burke says, hey, come to my wedding. And ironically, we got married on the same day. We went to Jeff Burke's reception. There was Scott, there was Michael. We didn't say anything. And so it's a giggle now every once in a while, every time
you know what's cool is like, look, you guys got married fast. I mean, I know you had like you had been divorced. I'm guessing, was Stephanie married before? And did she?
Yeah, she was married. We both had kids, and we blended our kids together.
Blended family.
Yeah. So we don't have any kids together. We have 5 of ourselves together.
Yeah. So you guys got married, and I'll tell you, like, I see you guys together, and it's like you guys are always looking like you're having a party. It's amazing. Like it's amazing, you know. And
it's interesting. We finally had our reception in October. We went ahead and let the cat out of the bag, said, hey, everybody, we're already married. Let's go have a reception. So we had our reception in October.
Yeah.
We went on our honeymoon I brought her to South Padre Island, Texas, for a honeymoon. And then we came right back and we shot the first episodes of Will It Blend? Literally, boom, just like that.
Yeah.
And then we blended, we basically Will It Blend, what it was an opportunity to see the blender in a different light. And now at the time of Will It Blend, I had never heard of YouTube. There were other video, like there was one website called Stupid Videos, and they would play stupid videos, and that's what YouTube pretty much was cat videos and funny things like that. But we decided to just showcase the power of the blender, because it was very powerful, whether you are a fan of it or not. And he would test his blender with 2x4s. And so he would stick 2x4s and he would gnaw them down to test the power whenever he made an adjustment or anything. And so my marketing guy said, hey, we need to show this. And so I pulled out my camera and we filmed him blending marbles. Was one of the first things we did.
Wow.
And then the marbles had glass in it, and so you blend the glass and then he'd open it and he'd tell us to don't breathe it because it's glass dust, and that became a gag throughout the show was don't breathe this. And Will It Blend basically was, we copied David Letterman's Will It Float that he used to do, on his show. And we put the lab coat on Tom Dixon as he would go in the demo room and demonstrate all these things that he could blend. So we did like 6 or 7 episodes just fooling around. And then I put this game show music to it. We make these short 1.5-minute clips of, episodes of what we would blend. So we would blend, rake handles, marbles, a whole Big Mac meal, a whole chicken, everything just to show the power. And we were starting to get tons of views. And then it wasn't until, and it was funny because when I saw like 10, 20,000 views, I remember thinking, is that somebody watching it 10,000 times, or is that 10,000 separate people? And because I didn't think anybody would want to watch this crap, and so as we went on to it, finally we started blending. We started co-branding, which means we would blend things that people cared about. So we blended an iPod, and that's when our views went through the roof. Was whenever we would blend an Apple product or something like that. And so our first episode was released November 2nd, and then by November 22nd, we were on the Today Show. And then all of a sudden,
nuts, dude. That is nuts. So
I know, isn't that wild?
2006, right? So November 2nd, 2006.
Yeah.
You released blending marbles.
Yeah, we were blending marbles, and then we were releasing one about every week, and so we made it on the Today Show. So we were on the Today Show on the Placid. There was Hall & Oates on one side performing. This is right before Thanksgiving, and there was us on the other side blending crazy stuff for the fans. And so all of a sudden it became this gag, and so we took our gag on the road. We started to go from the Today Show, and then we were on The View, and we were on I don't think we were on Ellen, but Ellen did call us, and I think she gave away a blender to her audience or something. I don't remember. But we all of a sudden, for about a couple of years, our views went higher and higher, and we were just blending crap for every week, and we were having fun. Stephanie and I would go shopping for things to blend. Those were our date nights, and that became while I was making videos to that were more training, but then when Will It Blend kicked in, it became like its own little portion of the company was just taking care of Will It Blend. It made Tom Dixon a celebrity, and we garnered about 500 million views when we were done.
That's
so it was a wild ride, and this is in the days before you could buy ad time. This is all ad time.
These are just organic views, right? People were just sharing and like exploding. They were organic. They had to be done on their own, and other, now you've got the Harmon brothers and the great stuff that they've been doing, and I've interviewed Austin Craig, and Austin talked about the early days, because it was Austin Craig's series, what was it, Aura Brush came right after Will It Blend, and so it was kind of inspired a little bit. I don't know if it's totally inspired, but according to Austin, there was a little bit of an inspiration, because Austin would put on the lab coat, and then Austin would do his gig, and he was fun. I mean, Austin's a great guy. Yes.
And so we kind of feel like we had a little hand into what the Harmon brothers are doing now. And our goal wasn't views. Our goal was sales. That was those blender sales. That's what we were after. We weren't after becoming YouTube celebrities at all, but that's kind of what it accidentally turned into. And we never really played up on it. We never really took it to that next level that I felt like we could have. But I think it's because the focus was selling blenders. And so I stayed with the company till about 2013, and then I left. And that started going into some other things, and that's anyway.
No,
there's Will It Blend.
It's crazy because it's such a cool story, and it's like one of the first of its kind. I mean, I remember it was one of the first things. Like, what Will of Glen was like just so popular and so huge. And so when I had met you, it was already doing its thing.
Yeah.
And so when people were like, "Oh, he is the Will of Glen guy. He's the one that created the whole campaign and everything," I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I remember seeing an article about you, and so I sincerely was very intimidated. I'm like, "Oh my gosh!"
Oh,
So,
I'm nothing. Yeah, I'm just the guy
well,
that pushed the
here's the thing,
button. You
dude.
know, I mean
Here's
that's.
the thing. You know what? I still am intimidated. Uh, no, you've been such a great friend to me. You've been such a great emotional support. In my career, like with some of the films that I've done, The Last Mountains on Earth and all those projects,
Which I'm a big fan of.
you're a
So
huge fan, you know, and you've been able to like support me, help me out, and kind of help pave the way. And we've always talked about doing other projects and stuff together. So hopefully we will do that. Hopefully
yeah.
you know, things will align and we'll be able to do some more work together.
Well, it's always fun. It's well, you're such a great idea guy, and we
Yeah.
always seem to kind of go like this with our ideas, where, I got one, you got one, and we hope to, we've got a few things we hope we're going to be able to do together, and
Yeah,
I'm
that would
still
be
hoping we will, working on it, and so that's.
that's
Of course, we're all in a shutdown right now, so all I can do is prep. But this is actually, this shutdown right now is
yeah.
actually a really good time for filmmakers who have their own movies to start planning, to start really working on. That's what I'm doing right now. Is I'm
Yeah.
planning on some of the ones you and I've talked about, and it's just good to prep right now, so that when the doors open and the money starts flowing again, then we just start right into production, and being independent, we can get some things done quicker and
Yeah.
more efficient, and we could actually. I personally think that we've struggled in the film world with the big guys, the Disneys and the Marvels and the Star Wars, running everything, and us independents have really kind of gotten squished, and we haven't been able to really. It's a numbers game, which is really kind of difficult.
Yeah.
But I certainly believe that with this whole shutdown, I think it's a good chance for independents like us
Yeah.
to be able to get back creative again, and then when that door opens, we can plant ourselves pretty well. I think it's going to be a big help to the independents when our doors open again, and so.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like now more than ever, people are looking for content. I know this. And so yeah, while I've been kind of in the mode of like everything's being shut down, some of the shows that I have been working and developing, I'm like, okay, now is the time to like reach out to like agents and stuff because they're not going anywhere. They're
Yeah, that's right.
Content, so might as well like reach out to them right now. So we are in the process of doing some of that stuff. So
that's awesome. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
So after Will It Blend, after I left Blend Tech, I went on. That's when I started Hidden in the Heartland.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
So maybe we can kick into that. Hidden in the Heartland was an idea. I ran into a guy that I became friends with named Rod Meldrum, and Rod is kind of a lightning bolt in the church, I guess you could say, because he's a good friend of mine, and he's and we talk a lot together about some things, but I decided Rod came up with me to this idea of the Book of Mormon happening in North America versus Central America.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where I decided maybe this is where I belong for a while. And luckily I had the ability to be able to take a break and to do some of my own stuff. So I decided to make at first it was going to be an independent film.
Yeah.
In fact, we had these ideas. In fact, I remember Charon, you and I had even talked about.
In fact, I still kind of want to do one of those movies.
Oh yeah.
If the time permits, because that was just such a fun concept, and we don't have to talk about that right now. But yeah.
But it led into this idea of this movement that's kind of happening in the church. So the church is now 200 years old, or at least since the first vision. The church itself is 190 years old. But for the first 100 years or so, there was the belief that the Book of Mormon would have happened in North America. And a lot of people will argue to that. But when you read Joseph Smith and when you read, some of the early writings, what's his name? Kimball, Kimball's early writings. Um, you see that what they talk about is Sidney Rigdon, Oliver Cowdery, they all talk about everything happening in North America. There never was this real discussion about going to Central or South America, maybe in little bits, until somewhere in the mid 1800s, somebody wrote a book about these two guys, Catherwood and Stevens, went down to Central and South America, and they made these, they took drawings at the time of these beautiful cities that were recently found in Central America that had, these large, what do you get, pyramid shaped areas and just a lot of cool artifacts in Central America. And so I think as the saints were moving west and were going through all the persecution, they were very hungry to find any kind of evidence of the Book of Mormon, because they're like, well, the Spirit told us the Book of Mormon is true, but the world needs some kind of proof, and they were struggling with it. And so they kind of found something and leaned on it. So by the turn of the century into the 1900s, when the saints were settled and things were starting to kick in, BYU was kicking in, they would go down to Central America and start doing work down there. But it didn't necessarily, while a lot of great stuff has been found down there, the biggest problem in this discussion is the Hill Cumorah. Where is the Hill Cumorah? And so I decided to do some of my own research, and I did a lot of looking into ancient American stuff, but most of the stuff I was looking for was not members of the church. They were just random people who were either an archaeologist or a geologist or some kind of ist, I guess you could say, somebody with some letters behind their names that can actually come and say, oh, this land over here, this happened, 2,000 years ago, or this land over here. People don't realize in America how much prehistory there is before Columbus, but we discount it because we're too busy settling here. We're too busy. There was a time in which the Native American was put at as kind of a negative situation when we didn't realize that Native American was probably remnants of the Lamanites and the Nephites. And so we were too busy pushing them aside and saying, okay, this is our land. Okay, thank you, and all that, and giving them their own place. And I'm not politically correct by any means, but I do believe that was a problem that we had. And so, but with that, ironically, while we're destroying their history, we could have been destroying the evidence of the Book of Mormon that was still around. We just don't know because it's gone. So all we can do is find little bits and pieces, whereas you could go to Central America and you can find a lot of stuff that was untouched because they didn't have a lot of the same issues down there. So their remnants naturally still exist. I personally believe Christ did visit Central America because there's evidence of it. I just don't believe that they were the Nephites or the Lamanites. So Hidden in the Heartland was at first it was a single documentary movie that turned into a series because there was so much material. And so we cover a lot of little bits, like, for example, all of the Hebrew that's been found in America. Or we cover the great earthquake of 1811 and 1812, which patterns the earthquake that you read in 3rd Nephi. Even the 3 days of darkness did exist in the 1811, 1812 earthquakes that they had. So a lot of things you'll find, a lot of artifacts that are left over, but also evidence of a lot of things that were destroyed, some on purpose, some just to say, I don't know what this is, I don't care, this is my farmland, I'm moving over. So America was an exciting place to come and just take over. And when that happened, I personally believe a lot of stuff just got destroyed, and so we don't know where it is or what it was. So the older books we can read, the better. And so Hidden in the Heartland, we did 7 episodes. We tried to, each episode, have a little bit of a dramatic piece at the beginning, maybe a 2-minute little dramatic episode. Zelf's Mound is another discussion, Joseph Smith and Zelf's. If people have never heard of that, Joseph, basically on Zion's camp, Joseph stopped and went up to a mound in Iowa. No, Illinois, I'm sorry, in Illinois, went up to the top of a mound, dug down in the mound, and uncovered some bones of an individual named Zelf, who he says was in the Book of Mormon during the Book of Mormon times. But it's not in the Book of Mormon itself. It's a separate story. And so that's a story that is controversial to some people, but it is in the church history archives, and the bones actually do exist. And you can see pieces of, well, you can't see the bones, but the reorganized church has a couple of the artifacts of the bones, and the rest of the bones are buried somewhere else. All these stories that people have never heard of, we try to cover in Hidden in the Heartland, and it's become fun. We did 7 episodes for one season. We did 3 episodes on a second season. They're all available on Amazon. And they're also available on Living Scriptures. And so you can see all 7 episodes.
I was going to ask where we can watch that. I mean, here's the thing. Like, I was having another conversation with another buddy of mine. And I was just telling him, one of the things that I've had a problem with regarding just politics and history and stuff is I don't know what to believe is true and what not to believe. And so that's one of the reasons why I've had a hard time, like, jumping into, like, politics, for instance, because
especially today.
What's that? Yeah, especially today.
Especially today, it's very difficult.
There's so many different ideologies and theories and things that are, like, displayed as fact, which I'm like, but is that fact? I don't know. And I know that the media paints a certain picture, a certain thing, and they can tell, hey, look, I'm a storyteller. I love to tell narratives. And I know they've told narratives as well. And if they can get a mass group of people to believe that narrative, then they, in a sense, have kind of won, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But I feel the same way about history as well. Like, sometimes, for the sake of peace of mind, the brain has told a certain type of history, or a certain type of event happening, or a certain type of, like, this is the way things went down, right? But like, I don't know. I don't know what is actually the truth. I don't know what exactly is.
It is
happened, and so it's nice to explore different ideas and explore different things, and to say, okay, could this be a possibility? Because, like, there's a. Have you ever remember the movie Truman Show? Remember that one?
Yeah. That's a great example too.
Of that movie, right?
Yeah.
And in that movie, the character played by Ed Harris was saying, we accept the world which we are presented with, right? And so if we have been given a certain set of information and say, this is fact, like, this is what it's supposed to be, then we'll just accept it. And if a new ideology comes along that threatens the old one, we kind of freak out, right? Because it kind of crumbles our foundation, and it makes it so we feel very uneasy. We're very uncertain about what's actually happening. And so, I
agree with you. And that's one of those things where in Hidden in the Heartland, I try really hard to not make final assumptions. I make a suggestion and go off that historical suggestion, and then I present the evidence. And we've even done a few episodes where we've actually provided the A and B evidence. Where we've had an opposing viewpoint come on and give their 2 cents, and I just cut between the two, and then it becomes interesting. And then we don't walk away with the answer. We just walk away with, well, here's something to think about. And most of it is not, Hidden in the Heartland's objective is not to ever prove the Book of Mormon. Its objective is to get people to really think about history, and then eventually to get into the Book of Mormon, to read the Book of Mormon if you're of faith or whatever, wherever you stand. The Book of Mormon is such an interesting piece. Even if you're not a member of the church, it is a very interesting document. Yeah. It's a very interesting book, where it came from, how it got there. And it's just fascinating. And we're never going to get the 100% of where everything happened.
Yeah.
That's why, to me, the only North Star as far as the church is concerned, in my personal opinion, is the Hill Cumorah. That's it. That's the only place that I can ever tell you to this day that I know where it is, because that's what Joseph Smith said. And so if he said so, then it must be so. If the church built this big, you know, multi-million-dollar facility there and said, "Hey, let's celebrate the Hill Cumorah," then that's got to be the Hill Cumorah. But if the Hill Cumorah has to be near all of the other cities, and that's why I say Ohio, New York, those are places where I think more of the work happened, because it was not this thing where, when you read the scriptures, it wasn't this thing where everything happened way down here, and then Moroni just made his way up north and then just plotted it, and the end. There's more to it. But in the end, it doesn't matter. It all depends on, it's just fun, interesting stuff. And that's really what Hidden in the Heartland is. It's just cool, interesting history, to think about. That's all. So.
No, I love it, and I'm excited to watch that series. I mean, I think that's going to be. It's good for me to revisit that and even think about some of the things that we've been discussing here, right? Because I love that the angle you're taking of, like, not trying to prove anything, just presenting facts, presenting things. And I think that's a great way to go, because then people can kind of make their own decisions for themselves, as opposed to being persuaded to believe one way or the other.
Yeah. It's like Star Trek or Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which is such a tough decision. Can't we just get along and just love them all?
It looks like you made your decision already with that shirt.
I have both faiths. I'm a representative of all faiths here. I've got both Star Trek and Star Wars.
You got both. Well, we don't have a ton more time, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the LDS Film Festival, because the LDS Film Festival was actually the festival where I first started going to and started networking when I first got into film, back in 2004. And it was a great place for me to meet people. I love networking and meeting people, so it was a great place for me to start my career. And back then, it was started and owned by this man, Christian Buisa. He's an Austrian filmmaker who's a fantastic guy, super great filmmaker. But he recently he sold it, right? He got, I don't know if you'd say get rid of it, but he just had to sell the film festival, where you came along and you purchased the film festival from him. Is that how it went down? Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. And Christian is such a good guy. I've known Christian since college, and I consider him a brother. And he moved back to Austria, I think, was his biggest issues. He had to move back to Austria, and with that became very difficult. He started the festival in 2001, and so we're going on 20 years now, and I started attending in 2006 is when I started, when I came back from living in Virginia, and that's when I went. And I started I started helping with the booths, and I entered in a few. I did this cool film with Rob Diamond on Elvis Presley. Tears of a King. I helped shoot that for Rob, and we showed that at the festival, and that was probably my first actual film in the festival. It's about 2008, I think, when we showed it, or something like that. 2009, and then from there I started kind of playing a bigger role for several years. I live right by the Sierra Theater, and that's what made it easy. And so I just started going, and then around 2016, 17, Christian he'd moved back to Austria a few years before that, and going back and forth was difficult. There were so many things I wanted to do differently, and finally he just says, well, here, let's just make a sale. And so we made a sale, and I took it over, and so for the last 3 years I've run it. I'm sure I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've actually had a great time. It's been really fun, because everybody, it's kind of a group thing, everybody, I don't make a lot of money doing it. It's honestly just something to keep everybody. It's like a family reunion every time we get
Uh,
together. And we
it
used to
is, you know?
we used to have it during Sundance, and
Wow.
I kept begging him to move the date past Sundance, and then finally he did. And so we kind of inched it each year, into the first week of March or so.
Yep.
And my opinion, while Sundance is cool and you get to meet people and network, I personally feel like the locals would actually get more out of coming to the LDS Film Festival on a long-term work basis, because
Yeah.
that's where the real work is
Yeah.
in the stuff that's shown at the festival. So if you want to really meet a director and actually act in their next movie, the
Yeah.
LDS Film Festival, you'll have a better chance at the LDS Film Festival than you would at Sundance, because
Oh, for sure.
most of those guys meet, drink, and have a good time, and then they never talk to each other until until the next Sundance, and that's about it. Whereas at the LDS Film Festival, we have actual deals that are made, and distributors coming and looking, and ideas are thrown around. And I mean, yeah, every year I think we try to make some kind of deals between the films coming in, or a new young filmmaker, and the distributor, working together, because we really have that synergy. It's struggled over the years,
Yeah.
but like this last festival, we had two great panels that to me were probably the most important part of the whole festival.
Yeah.
And that was the panel on how Mormons can adapt to the Christian market, because the Christian market is very hot right now.
Yep.
And so there's the financial aspect to that. And then the other one was just about how we can navigate through our distribution, because I think a lot of filmmakers, they start making a movie and they don't think a lick about distribution. They dream of it, but they don't know the reality of, you got to make a film just like you're making any product. If you're going to make a product, you got to think of the end user in mind. Are they going to like it? Is it easy to work with? Can I understand it? Any kind of product you make, when you think of all those elements, you got to think that way when you're in the middle of writing and casting and working on your movie. Is it something that's going to fit, a niche or a need or something? And that's the LDS film market. For so many years, people have always kind of thought, oh, well, it's dying, so we're done. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes up with another movie, and LDS film is revived again.
Yeah.
And so maybe what we ought to do is quit saying that it's dying and just start adding to it the positive nature of the things that can be sold and done. We got to be better about our sales. I think, and we got to be better about a little bit of the quality of the productions, but they are getting better. They are getting better, and got to give it some time. Got to let it happen, and you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to, one bad movie and I'm done with LDS cinema. I mean, you can't do that. Otherwise, you would have thrown out Netflix. You would have turned off your TV and never watched another Hollywood movie again, because 80% of the stuff they make is crap. So we have a pretty good record, I think, a track record. But
well, I'll tell you, like, my career, I would say, started off at the LDS Film Festival. It was back when it was held at the Provo Library.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I remember meeting a fellow filmmaker, Dave Skousen.
Dave, he's such a good guy.
Good guy, and he took a liking to me. We became friends, and then he introduced me to another filmmaker, John Light, who
Another great guy. Yep, John's awesome.
And I was on one of his films, just as an extra working, but we networked and became friends. And then, like, a year or two later, I was acting in one of his movies as like a bigger role, like a main part. And I just keep thinking, like, there's so many different little miracles that happen. And like, for me, that festival, it's like near and dear to my heart, just because of the relationships I've built. And although my films that I'm making right now aren't always LDS, or the projects I've done aren't necessarily always LDS themed, um, I still cherish those relationships a lot, and I'm all about telling a good story with good characters, good compelling characters, and yeah, I'm really grateful. I'm grateful that the festival is still going. I'm grateful that you are at the helm of it because you're doing an awesome job with it.
Well, I appreciate it. And, honestly, a good 60-70% of the movies we show don't even have an LDS theme to it.
Yeah.
They're just LDS people who, even if it's just one person in the film or one little thing that's LDS, we've even shown movies that have no LDS people in it. One year, a couple of years ago, we showed a friend of ours that we made friends with. Her name was Kimber Eastwood, who ironically is Clint Eastwood's daughter.
Yeah.
And she came, and she's not LDS, but she married into an LDS family, and that family contacted us and said, hey, she'd like to show her movie. It was God related, but it wasn't LDS. And we worked hard to just, welcome her with open arms and
awesome.
just enjoyed our time with her and became lifelong friends. And that's really what it is. LDS cinema shouldn't be a thing that you're all in and you're all out. It should be something that if you have something that matches, participate. And if not, we still celebrate with you. And that's the way it should be. I mean, we don't want to, not everything that, some actors make is a Christian movie, and not everything is going to be an action movie or whatever kind of genre it is. It's you are allowed, in my opinion, you're allowed to dip in and out, and it's okay. It's just, it's its own thing, and there's nothing wrong with it. And anyway, that's, a lot of people have had struggles with LDS cinema, but they need to just let go and not worry about the struggles and just worry about, hey, is the acting good? Is the camera work good? Is it telling the story? That should be the focus, So.
Well, I appreciate it, Kels, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. I mean, I think it's been good to hear your journey and what you've been doing so far. I guess last question would be, one of the central things I've been doing with a lot of these interviews is trying to figure out how we can have more joy right now, right? And I've always known you to be a pretty joyous person, and someone that got a level head on him. I know you've gone through your fair share of trials, we all have. But what have you done to have joy right now, especially during this time of uncertainty?
Well, let's see. We married off our last daughter. Well, we still have a son, but he lives somewhere else. But we married off our last daughter. So Stephanie and I have been empty nesters for the last month or so. I've really enjoyed my time spending with Stephanie. She is my best friend, and so spending time with her, and then also a lot of flashback stuff. I brought something in here that was interesting. I wanted to show.
Yeah.
This is actually a one sheet, and this is Star Trek 3. Okay, this is where look, it's,
oh my gosh,
you in there too. Okay, we'll do that. It's a Star Trek 3, and this is the back side of it, and this has Gene Roddenberry's autograph.
Wow. Okay.
And so, because when I was young, and getting into film as a teenager, Gene Roddenberry's cousin was actually in my ward, and he's a member of the church, and I was getting into film. But what I love has been to, as we clean house, we've done a lot of cleaning house. We've been pulling up old things that we haven't seen in a long time, such as that. And it's been really fun pulling up things from the past and having good memories and realizing that our life really has been pretty good. And we talked earlier about, all the misinformation that goes around, and we don't know what's true and what's not. And the honest truth is, we only need to know what we need to know for us right now, and everything else could honestly care less, because it depends on our relationships, connecting with our friends, realizing being away from our friends has made me hunger for them again. And I'm so grateful that I get to be with my best friend, and I get to hibernate with her, I guess, so to speak, quarantine with her. and then we just get to clean house and just enjoy our time. And so I guess looking at the past has been fun. It's been a fun time to be able to clean up, and that's what brings me joy, is to remember that there were good times, and while there were some hard times, the good times are what you'll most remember, and those relationships you'll never forget. So anyway,
I love it, man. That's awesome. That's great. That's a great way to end. But yeah, thank you, Kels. Thanks for chatting with me and to share your story a little bit about what you've been going through and all that stuff. And yeah, Hidden in the Heartland, guys. If you want to learn a little bit more about some of the things that you've been studying regarding the happenings of the Book of Mormon, potentially in North America, that's a great series to check out. It's on Amazon.
Well, you keep up the good work yourself there, Charan. You're doing awesome, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just reaching out to people, talking to people. So, well, thanks again, Kels. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we will. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon. Okay, and let's work on those movies together when this all ends. Okay?
Let's do it, man. I'm all for it. So thanks, man.
Okay, take care, Kels.
All right, brother.
We'll see ya. Okay, bye.